Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Midlife Crisis, the show where I talk about every single DC event, or at least the ones that are universe spanning, in order and explain what happens in them, and usually read the tie-ins. It really depends on the event. Starting this week, this is going to be a 2-week event. We're going to be talking about Bloodlines, the 1993 event that DC made, basically as an answer to Image Comics. Image was big at the time, they were making waves, and so everyone from Marvel to DC to, everyone else were trying to imitate Image because they were the current thing. The art style, blood and gore, as much as DC and Marvel could get away with, just making things really edgy and gross. Like, that's what Bloodlines is. Now, Bloodlines is infamous because of this, because they focused more on trying to copy the Image than make a good event. And another thing people don't like about Bloodlines is that it was basically just an initiative to introduce a whole wave of new characters, because in every single annual, a new character is introduced thanks to the gimmick that goes on in the story. Basically, to summarize Bloodlines up very quickly before we deep dive into it, Bloodlines is about an alien race that attacks Earth and tries to suck out people's spinal cords. Normally this would kill them, but some people survive, and when you survive, you get superpowers, and those are the new characters. There's not really much else to talk about this. I tried doing some research to figure out how this event even came to exist. I couldn't find anything. Unlike the other 2 annual events, this one doesn't have a beginning and an end. Like, it doesn't like, the annuals aren't sandwiched between, like, a 2-issue miniseries. The 2-issue miniseries is instead the very end, and it bookends it. So this one just starts with Lobo Annual 1. So, without further ado, I just want to get into this, and I just want to cover this event. Let's get straight into it with Lobo Annual 1. Let's do it. So, Lobo Annual 1, written by Alan Grant with art by Christian Alamy. This is where the Bloodlines event begins. There is a specific order to read these in, because Lobo does actually start off the whole event. So Lobo is currently interrogating this guy because this group known as the Poiple Gang, who are basically just a gang of pirates who are kind of like a parody of Captain Hook's gang. Like, his right-hand man is literally called Smee and looks almost exactly like Smee. They stole his motorcycle, so he's interrogating this guy. He's threatening to melt him, and then Strata comes in, who is a member of the Legion, and is basically like, "Hey, Lobo, Real Docs wants to talk to you." And Lobo's like, "Shit. Like, I wanted to melt this guy." Alright, and so he goes to see Real Docs, and Real Docs is like, "Hey, Lobo. So I got the small team led by this woman named Layla. Meet Layla. Basically, we want you to go into this rift that's open up in space and see what's in there, because we think there's some unidentified, like, flying object in there, and we want you to check it out and see if it's dangerous. If you find anything alive, bring it back to me." And Lobo's like, "Sure, but I'll be the leader." And then Layla kicks him in the nuts, and Real's just like, "Nah, Layla's the leader, you gotta obey what she says." And so Lobo reluctantly goes along with Layla and her crew. Layla's basically just this woman with, like, a purple mohawk. She's literally in this just to be a new character. Like I said earlier, these annuals introduce new characters. Layla is that character for this. So, Lobo and Layla and her crew go off to the rift. Meanwhile, the Poiple Gang find the same rift and go inside it, where they find this giant alien-looking ship. It looks like a giant egg. It looks really weird. And they land on it, and they break their way inside, and Lobo and their crew see the Poiple Gang on this alien ship thing, and so Lobo's just like, "Hey, let me shoot at him," and Layla's like, "Yeah, sure," and so Lobo takes control of the ship and starts shooting at the Poiple Gang, causing them to have to evacuate their ship and all enter the alien craft. So they decide to do so. Smee is originally left on the ship to die, but he just shoots one of their crewmates and takes their spaceship. Spacesuit, because there wasn't enough spacesuits left. So the Poiple Gang head inside the alien ship, with Lobo and the gang going in after them. Lobo actually tries to hook up with Layla, and she just, like, punches him in the face, and she's had enough, so she has, like, this little hypnotized, like, necklace that she uses to hypnotize Lobo and have him act like a dog so that she can, like, order him around. So a couple of members of the Purple Crew start, you know, infiltrating the alien ship, and they both get killed by Lobo. And so Lobo and Layla's crew split up. So some of Layla's crew go off to explore, while Layla and Lobo and a couple of other members of the crew go off to explore. They go separate ways. Meanwhile, the alien group, whose name isn't revealed in this one, they all wake up. Then their separate names are revealed. I'll read out a couple of their names right now. So, we got Gamia, and we got Slod, and those are the names that are currently, like, that's a couple of names of these aliens. So one of them's called Gamia, one of them's called Slod. Smee and Poipole find this closed door, and it opens, and Poipole just kicks Smee in, and that's when Smee comes face to face with the aliens. And this is when it's revealed that they can transform, and so one of them turns into Smee, and then they grab Smee, and this is when, like, the alien ripoff of this comes out, where, like, they've got little mouths inside their mouths, just like Alien, that they put on your spine, and they suck all the fluid out of your spine and kill you. And so they do that to Smee. So it's the first time we see it. It's really gross. Blood comes out of his mouth. He, like, shrivels up. It's disgusting. Meanwhile, Lobo's team of crew accidentally set off a tripwire, which causes a bunch of robot security to start attacking them. So a bunch of Layla's crew just gets slaughtered. Like, one of them gets ripped in half. This is really violent. Like, Lobo kills one of the robots. Pretty much the entire crew dies, except for, like, Layla and a couple and another guy. Yeah, Smee dies, and then the other half of Layla's crew gets attacked by the aliens as well, and they get all their spines sucked out, and they die too. And Layla notices that they are not responding, and she's like, "Ah, shit, we gotta go find them because they're probably in trouble." And it's really gross. They're all getting ripped apart and stuff. And that's when the aliens come at them. They notice that something's breaking through the door, and they're like, "Oh shit, what's that?" And it's the aliens with the bodies of their dead teammates. And so Layla's like, "You bastards!" And they start attacking the aliens. Meanwhile, the other members of the Legion that were left back on the ship are like, "Oh man, I wonder how, like, Layla and that are doing." Meanwhile, Lobo and Layla are getting wrecked by these aliens. And then the aliens just start, like, killing them. Because it turns out that, like, some of them transformed into their crewmates. And so, like, they'd infiltrated their crew. Like, the ones that we saw die earlier, the aliens took their form to trick Lobo and Layla, and it worked. And so they transformed back into aliens and then start killing the remaining members of their group. And then one of them essentially kills Layla, like, sucks the spinal fluid out of her spine. But unlike the other people, Layla doesn't die. She's actually barely left alive, and Lobo realizes this. He kills Slod, one of the aliens, by blowing its head up. And then Lobo is like, "Look, I'm a gentleman, so I'm gonna save her life, even though I hate her guts. And then I'm gonna get the heck out of here." So he sets a bomb to go off and blow up the entire ship. But right before he can do that, he gets attacked by Poipole. He manages to get Poipole into a position where he can interrogate him. And Poipole reveals that, like, when they stole Lobo's bike, they set it on fire to celebrate. Lobo's just like, "You fucking idiot." And he just rips Poipole's head off and kills him. He puts a hook underneath, like, his jaw and then just rips the top of his jaw off. It's so gross. And then they get attacked by the aliens, and Lobo sets the bomb. And then that's when he finds out that Layla has powers now, because she wakes up and she has amnesia, because getting your spine sucked out by these aliens and surviving also gives you amnesia. She has powers now. She's like, Lobo can't hurt her when he punches her, and she punches him a lot harder. So they just fight because, like, for no real reason except Lobo is just an asshole. So he starts trying to fight her. And then he realizes the bomb is still going off. And he's like, ah, shit, we better get out of here. Otherwise we're going to die. So they find an airlock. And Layla's like, for some reason, I feel like I'm going to be able to survive out in space. And Lobo's like, all right, your funeral. So they open up the airlock. They head outside. Turns out Layla has superpowers now so she can breathe in space. And then the ship blows up, but it doesn't destroy the entire alien ship. It just damages it heavily. They make their way, like, Lobo and Layla make their way back to their ship. And then Vrildox is really pissed off because Lobo set off a bomb, possibly killing the aliens. But Lobo's like, hey, these guys were dangerous. You should be thanking me because I don't think we wanted to bring these things back to Earth. You know, that's the last place we want them. And so it turns out that the aliens did not get killed and that they were only heavily damaged. And it also turns out that Lobo screwed over Earth because the explosion that he caused has sent the alien ship in a trajectory straight toward Earth. And so the aliens are like, I'm sensing that we're going to land on a place that will possibly benefit us anyway. So our plan isn't completely ruined. Because their plan is to just find delicious spines to suck out. And they think that planet Earth, which is where they're going, where they're being sent, is the perfect place for them to get spinal fluids. So that's the end of the annual, and the next annual we're going to be talking about is the Man of Steel Annual 2. There's nothing really to say about this annual except that it's what you would expect from a Lobo annual. It's very violent. It starts off this whole story that's already, like, not that interesting. Like, it's literally just an alien ripoff. If the aliens weren't born from eggs and were instead just giant aliens that sucked your spine out. It's gross. Alright, so Man of Steel Annual 2, written by Louis Simonson, with art by Eddie Newell and Mike Barrero. So this one's pretty straightforward compared to the last one because it's really just like John Henry Irons, or Henry John Irons, the main character of the current Man of Steel title, fights one of the aliens. Obviously it's a little bit deeper than that and we'll go into it, but, like, you know, it's pretty straightforward. Info that's really important. This annual takes place during the reign of Superman, which is the arc of Superman where Superman has just died and now 4 other Supermen have replaced him. So we got Superboy, we got John Henry Irons, who is going by the name Man of Steel. He basically is just a regular dude with a really powerful suit of armor on that allows him to fly and stuff. The Eradicator, and then Cyborg Superman. I'm pretty sure they're all in this event, but this is specifically John Henry Irons. So basically, in this annual, the aliens land on Earth, and then the one that we follow throughout this annual, what was his name? It starts with an A. Well, first of all, it's a she, because apparently these aliens have, like, different genders. Angon. So Angon is the alien that we follow throughout this annual. They land on Earth, they kill a couple of bikers, and then Angon decides to head off to a bright city that she sees in the distance, which is assumed to be Metropolis. So she heads there while the other aliens are like, Angon's gonna ruin everything for us because of her hunger. So she heads off to the Metropolis. And basically what happens is John Henry Irons has this friend whose name is Tom, a character who was introduced in this annual for obvious reasons. Tom is a big fan of Superman. He works out at the gym that Henry goes to. Tom has a brother named Petey, and their family is kind of like they've been having it rough, especially Tom, who is currently out of the job. Basically, what happens in this is that Tom gets attacked by Angon, and then he gets his spine sucked out, and then Tom transforms into, like, he gets superpowers. He gets, like, knives all over his body, and his hair falls out, and he's able to throw knives and stuff, and he gets amnesia. And so he goes missing, And so Maggie Sawyer is trying to find him, like trying to find who's killing people, and she thinks it might be Tom because he went missing at the same time that people started dying. Henry is looking for Tom because Tom is his friend, and then Petey, Tom's brother, goes looking for Tom as well, and Tom ends up in the underground, which is this area in Metropolis where all these like mutated people live, and he starts freaking out, and he almost he hurts them by accident, and then he's just like, I'm a monster, and he runs away. And Henry arrives, and he asks the underground dwellers where Tom went, and they tell him where Tom went, and so he goes off after Tom, and he finds Tom, and he convinces Tom about who he is, and tells him everything that's happened, and then they go to search for Petey, because they find out from Tom's mom that Petey is looking for him, and Petey gets attacked by Angon, and Angon goes to kill Petey, but then Tom and Henry show up just in time, and they have a massive fight with Angon, where they figure out that Tom's new powers can really hurt Angon. So together they use their powers on Angon. They almost kill Angon. Maggie Sawyer's team shows up, and they start shooting Angon. But Angon manages to get away, and Tom reunites with Petey, and they decide to head home, where Tom is going to be a superhero because he's the one that's introduced in this annual, while Henry decides that, like, it's probably not the last time that they're going to see these aliens, and they got to figure out, like, what's going on, and that it seems like Earth is being invaded. And Angon talks about how they couldn't let the humans kill her, like, she had to get away with her life because otherwise the other aliens would never forgive her for dying, and that they're going to continue trying to find people to suck their spines out. And that's basically what happens in this annual. That's the whole thing. It's pretty straightforward. Very simple story beats. This one was better than the Lobo one, I would say. The Lobo one was just ridiculous. This one at least involved, like, a plot involving, like, a family and stuff, so there was some stakes. Not saying that the Lobo one didn't have stakes. Almost every character in that one died, but also, like, are we really going to be rooting for Lobo, who is just a massive asshole and a murderer? Like, I don't think so. You know, at least Henry is an actual protagonist, and, you know, Tom is a character who is a good guy. Yeah. This one was better than the last one, but, like, considering it's a part of the Bloodlines event, it was already doomed to not be a great annual to begin with, because Bloodlines is not that great. But yeah, the next annual we're going to be talking about is, what was the annual, the next one? It's Shadow of the Bat Annual 1, which is a Batman annual, because at this point Batman had like 3 different series going on at the same time. So yeah, got Batman next, so let's see what happens in that. Alright, so Batman Shadow of the Bat Annual 1, much like the Man of Steel Annual, is pretty straightforward. This one introduces a new character named Joe Public, who is just this random guy who fights crime in Gotham, introduced in this annual. Basically, this annual just follows one of the aliens is kidnapping people around Gotham and taking them to, like, this area where he keeps them alive, but he also kills some of them. He's basically creating, like, his own little, like, food supply. So Batman crosses paths with this character named Joe Public. Joe Public tries to team up with Batman, but their little partnership doesn't really work out. Joe is trying to take down this guy named Happy Jack, who is a mobster, like this mafia dude, because Happy Jack was responsible for drugs getting into the school that Joe worked at, and this kid named Tommy, like, overdosed and died, and now Joe is trying to get revenge. Happy Jack and his crew get attacked by the alien, and Happy Jack is murdered. Joe is stolen by the alien, and is bitten on the spine by the alien and given superpowers. The powers he get are really boring. He's just like that other character from the Lobo one. He's just got like super strength and can take a hit. That's the only powers he really gets. Batman is investigating the murders by this alien alongside a character named Pagan, who I think might have also been introduced in this annual as kind of like a red herring of like, oh, which one's going to get powers? Is it going to be Pagan or is it going to be Joe Public? And it was Joe Public. Pagan is fighting against Jack and the gangs because the gangs pushed her sister to death, and so now she's trying to get revenge. So they go and investigate the deaths. They eventually find all of the people that have been kidnapped by the alien, and they fight the alien alongside Joe Public, who shows off his new powers, and then the alien runs away. And Batman is basically like, I'm really afraid of where they're headed. Like, I hope that this doesn't lead to anything bad. And that's the entire annual. It's as straightforward as that. You know, Batman teams up with Joe Public and Pagan. Joe Public gets his powers. The alien gets away. And that's it. So the next annual that we're going to be talking about is Flash Annual 6, I'm pretty sure. So we got that to look forward to. Yeah, Flash Annual 6. So let's see what Mark Waid can cook up when he introduces a new character called Argus. So, Flash Annual 6, or we might as well just call it Argus Annual 6, because Wally West barely appears in this annual. He shows up towards the end. This annual actually takes place during Return of Barry Allen, even though it came after. It does come after, which is why I'm reading it in this order, obviously, because it's part of the event. But there's a little note in it that's like, this annual takes place before issue 58, or like around the same time. So, basically, this annual follows this guy named Nick. He goes by the name Nick Kovac because he's a secret agent who's infiltrated the mob and is trying to take them down from the inside. He goes by the name Nick Kovac, but it turns out that his name isn't actually Nick Kovac. It's actually, what was his name? Nick Kelly. Yeah, so his name is Nick Kovac currently, but his real name is Nick Kelly. So he meets this member of the mob, and the guy just knows who he is. He knows that he's a secret agent and that he's infiltrating them. And just as he's about to, like, he doesn't want to kill Nick in front of everyone. He wants to use Nick as a way to, like, take over the mob, as, like, leverage. But then the aliens attack, and this dude gets killed by them, like the guy that's, you know, figured out who Nick is. And then Nick gets his spine sucked out, and then Nick gets powers, and he becomes Argus. His abilities as Argus is that he can turn invisible while he's in the shadows, but not while he's in light. And he can see, like, the heat signatures of people. And then later on he gets a giant hammer that he uses as a weapon, and chains that he also uses as well. So he thinks that he's not sure what attacked him. He didn't know that they were aliens because they catch him off guard. Nick thinks that it's the Combine that attacked him because he sees the Combine as the only people that can use weapons like the aliens did. So he goes looking for the Combine. He, like, infiltrates their facility, and then the two Combine guys that he's tracking down both get killed by the aliens, and that's how he finds out that they're aliens. So he goes and tracks them down and follows them to, like, a sawmill, because they keep leaving sawdust everywhere, so that's how he figures out where they're coming from. Meanwhile, Linda Park is also investigating these dead bodies, and she finds sawdust, which leads her to the sawmill as well, with her cameraman, where her cameraman gets killed by the aliens, and then Linda gets kidnapped, and then Argus tries to save Linda, but before he can go in to save her, Wally shows up for the first time in like 40 pages. He shows up and is like, Linda was in trouble. They said they haven't seen her at the station, even though they were expecting her. What have you done with her? And Argus is like, hey, I have nothing to do with Linda's disappearance. I'm just trying to save her like you are. She's in there being held by those aliens. So Nick goes in to fight one of the aliens and save Linda, while Wally stays outside and fights another one of the aliens. The alien throws a giant gasoline tank into the sawmill blowing up everything and killing one of the aliens. Like, as far as I know, the aliens kill themselves in this. They don't make it out of this alive. They both die. Nick grabs Linda, but there's no way of them escaping, and so they pray for something to save them, and Wally West runs in and saves them with his super speed. Throughout the story, Nick has been hitting on Linda and his secret identity, because he does have a secret identity. They don't know that he's Argus, because he's wearing a costume and stuff. So he's been hitting on Linda throughout the entire story, and then Linda at the very end turns him down and says, I only date good guys, because, like, you've been infiltrating mobs and stuff, and so you're a bad guy. I only date good guys. And Nick's like, oh, well, I hope that Wally West makes you happy. And then Mark Waid sets it up as if he's going to continue using Argus as a character in Flash stories, because Argus talks about how Wally is dealing with a lot, and he might not be able to take down the Combine by himself, and that he might need some help. But I'm pretty sure Mark Waid does not use Argus ever again after this, so I don't know what he's doing. I don't know why he's setting this up as, like, Argus being a reoccurring character. Like, he is not. Which is confusing to me. Like, I get not wanting to have to create a new character and that you're forced to do it for an event, but, like, why won't you create a character that you actually want to use? You know? Just create a character who is going to be part of the reoccurring cast, and then it should be fine. But nah, it seems like everyone's just creating characters that they don't want to use, and they just want somebody else to use. But yeah, that's that annual. That was Argus Annual 6, guest starring The Flash. And the next annual that we're going to be talking about... Sorry, I'm trying to bring it up. God damn it. The New Titans, Annual 9. Yay. This is gonna be good. Marv Wolfman during his 90s Titans run, which is like a low for the Titans. So this is gonna be good, obviously. Alright, so the New Titans Annual 9, is supposed to be the introduction of a character named Anima. This one, just like the other ones, pretty straightforward, and also not that great. It's not written by Marv Wolfman, who was writing Titans at the time. It's written by some other people. Yeah, I honestly kind of just, like, I did read this, but I was also kind of, like, skimming through it, too, because it's just not that interesting. It's almost like two stories going on at the same time that then, like, cross over. So, like, at first the Titans aren't even dealing with the aliens, and that's, like, a separate plot, but then they come into conflict with the aliens. So basically what happens is the aliens land in, like, this voodoo ritual that's going on, and they kill everyone at the ritual, and then they go searching for more food. Meanwhile, the Titans are training, and then they find that something's going on in an oil rig, so they go and deal with that. And when they go there, Aqualad shows up because the ocean is being polluted, so they help Aqualad deal with that threat. Meanwhile, there's this character named Courtney, who is the daughter of this guy named Jeremy, and basically her and her brother, she's the brother of a guy named Jeremy, and then I can't remember the name of their dad. They basically take their dad's money and go out shopping, and while they're out shopping, Courtney gets abducted by the aliens, and the Titans find out about this, and they go searching for her. She gets taken to this place where the aliens have fed on all these people, and they feed on her spine, and then she gets amnesia, and she gets powers, and the way she comes up with her superhero name is she sees the broken sign of an animal preservation facility, which is where she is, and it says Anima, and so she's like, oh, Anima must be my name. And the ability she gets is that she has the ability to project, like, monstrous animal versions of herself from her body with, like, claws and shit. So it's kind of like Green Lantern, in a way, where she makes, like, hard-like constructs of, like, animal-like versions of herself. So it's not animals, but it's, like, her coming out of her body with claws and stuff, like, coming out of her back, like a giant version of herself with claws and stuff. So she goes after the aliens to get her revenge, and she crosses paths with the Titans, and she teams up with the Titans, and they fight the aliens, And she also comes into conflict with Panther at one point too, because Panther finds her. Panther is a member of the Titans at this point. I'm not going to go into that because there's a lot there. If you want to learn more about Panther, then read Marv Wolfman's New Titans. You'll find a little about that. Read the Titans Hunt arc. That's where she's introduced. She meets Panther. They fight each other, and then Anima runs away, and then eventually she teams up with the Titans, and they fight the aliens. And then the aliens, like they always do, they get away because I guess they're not allowed to kill them in the annuals because they got to save it for there has to be a final battle, so the aliens aren't allowed to die unless you Mark Wade, in which 2 of the aliens died in his annual, but most of the time they get away, and that's what happens. And our Anima is a character, and she's not even gonna last very long because, as I've said before, all of these new characters that got introduced in this event were all killed off later down the line. Most of them in Infinite Crisis. This annual is just whatever. It's these are all kind of the same formula of just somebody gets their spine sucked out, they get powers, they team up with the hero of the book, and they fight the aliens. That's pretty much the plot of how these goes. But the other ones at least were interesting. This one was just what? It's just nonsense. It was fine. It wasn't terrible. It's just whatever. I don't really care about Anima. And I also don't really care about the Titans team that's I'm reading Titans at the moment, and the team is just Nightwing, Starfire, and then you got Red Star and Panther, and Arsenal's cool, he's there. And then, Cyborg is completely different now, and Beast Boy is always kind of been the worst in Marv Wolfman's Titans. Raven's dead at the moment. His team is kind of all over the place. And Nightwing's eventually going to leave, so that's another interesting character that eventually leaves that team. Anyway, let's move on to the next annual and hope that it's better than this one. Alright, we found a good one, guys. We found a good annual. Superman Annual 5 of Bloodlines. This is a good one. Why is it a good one? Because it actually ties into the ongoing story that was going on Superman at the time. And the character that becomes the superhero in this was a character already previously established before this event even started. So Dan Jurgens took the opportunity to take a character he'd already made and turn them into a superhero or a super character. And it's pretty great how he does it. So, as the previous annual did, this one follows another one of the current the Supermen. This one is Cyborg Superman, who believes that he is Superman, and is basically saying I was damaged to the point of needing to repair organs and stuff with robotics after the fight with Doomsday. So now I'm a cyborg. So basically what happens in this one is that previously in the Superman series, Lex Luthor, I've mentioned previously, is in a clone body of himself, posing as his own son to try and create a heroic image of himself. He had a martial arts instructor named Sasha Green, and she humiliated him in front of everyone because she's so good at fighting, so she kicked his ass. So he straight up went to the locker room while she was in there and strangled her to death, and then dumped her body in a landfill. So this happened in a previous issue. So in this annual, it's revealed that her body was dumped in the landfill, and then the aliens come along and they kill, the Bloodlines aliens come along. They kill the guys that are like the security guard that is in the landfill, and then they find Sasha's dead body, and they suck out her spine fluid, and then she gains powers. Meanwhile, Cyborg Superman teams up with this guy named Detective Henderson, as they are trying to figure out who is murdering people. It's obviously the aliens, but they don't know that. Cyborg Superman is trying to get them on his side, but they don't trust him because they don't even know if he is the real Superman or not. Meanwhile, Sasha Green wakes up in the landfill completely void of all memories, and she soon discovers that she has the ability to, when she touches people, not only does she take their memories and stuff, she also believes that she's them. So she takes their personality and adds it to her own. but they are still themselves. They are still alive, they still function. They just see her acting like them and it freaks them out. And it also creates a mental link between them, which she discovers later, so that she can actually tell them to do things by telling herself to do something, and they will do it as well because she is them now. She eventually comes up with the name Myriad, and she becomes an assassin. Because basically what happens is she starts off by stealing the memories of just a regular woman, and like steals her car and stuff, but she thinks that it's her car. Then later on, she takes like the memories of like a gangster, and because she has Sasha Green's memories, she does want revenge on Luther, so she goes to Luther Corp in order to get revenge on him. And Luther wants to just get rid of her because he doesn't want them to find out that he killed her. And Cyborg Superman found like DNA of the aliens, so he believes that Sasha was killed by the aliens, but he also wants to ask Sasha what the truth is, and Sasha will tell them that Lex Luthor killed her because she does have the memories. And Lex Luthor doesn't want that to happen, so he kind of convinces them to let him take her in instead of taking her to a hospital because she gets shot by Luthor. Because he attempts to kill her, but it makes it look like it was self-defense. He goes as far as to like blow up his own tower, the generator in his tower, to try and like get Sasha to be evacuated from the facility. And so he like takes Sasha and puts her in a helicopter and he with an assassin, so that when the helicopter takes off, the assassin will kill her. But what he doesn't account for is that like he doesn't know Sasha has powers, so she absorbs the assassin's memories and essentially becomes the assassin. And that's when she discovers that she can control the people, that like she can tell if she's linked to someone, she can tell herself to do something and that person will do it too. So she tells herself to kill herself with the gun, and the assassin shoots herself, and then that's when the helicopter crashes, and Lex Luthor thinks that Sasha has been killed, but it turns out that Sasha escaped from the helicopter as it blew up, and she goes on to become an assassin known as Myriad. And I truly believe that, like, she could appear, it seemed like, because she was already an established character in these Superman comics by Dan Jurgens, I feel like Dan Jurgens is actually going to bring her back and that she will have a reoccurring role in these comics. So yeah, Cyborg Superman never finds out what happened to Sasha. Lex Luthor, nobody finds out that he killed her. And the aliens... It's funny because the aliens aren't even in this one very much. After they bite Sasha, they don't appear anymore. And that's fine because like the story of this annual is actually good and is interesting, and Dan Jurgens did something interesting with the concept of Bloodlines. Yeah, I would recommend that if you're gonna read Bloodlines, or if you just want to read like an annual from Bloodlines, you don't care reading about the whole thing, read this one because Dan Jurgens' Superman is good. I like his Superman, and this is a good annual. This is probably one of the better parts of like Reign of Superman. Reign of the Superman. So, yeah, definitely check this one out. This was a good one. Good job, Dan. Did a good job. Alright, so Green Lantern Annual 2. The Bloodlines tie-in is really freaking weird. I don't know what Gerard Jones was smoking when he wrote this one, but he does a whole lot of stuff with the aliens that we've never seen before. He kind of just makes up a bunch of shit that kind of, like, doesn't... Like, he doesn't really stick to the continuity that we've established so far with these aliens. And it starts off right away where this character named Nick Mayak, who is the one that gets powers, he's in the hospital, nurse gets killed by one of the aliens, and then the alien comes in and sucks his spinal fluid out, and then eventually the police would come and find out that he's... or the doctors would come and find out that he's fully healed, because he was in an accident where he lost both of his legs in a car accident alongside his father. But yeah, his legs are fully healed, and he has the ability to grow his limbs back, and then he eventually gets, like, knives that he throws and stuff, and he talks about how his past, involved him, like, he played darts with his dad or something, and that's why he's so good at throwing things. The point is, he remembers who he is. So, like, as we know, what's established in previous annuals is that if you get your spinal fluid sucked out and you survive, you get amnesia. But Gerard Jones is just like, no, Nick Meyer remembers everything. He remembers his past, he remembers his name. He remembers what's going on right now. He remembered what happened to him. He's the only person so far who has remembered everything. Who, like, remembers getting attacked by the alien. He knows exactly what attacked him. It's really stupid. I just don't think Gerard, like, asked anyone, like, what the, like, how this works, how the alien stuff works. So Nick goes searching around for answers. There's also women being attacked in Coast City and murdered, so he goes to investigate that. Meanwhile, Hal Jordan is dealing with the fact that Aricia is back, and she wants to get into a relationship with him. She even, like, she, like, sped up her own age so that he would date her, but Hal's just like, no, I'm not going to date you because it's wrong, so no. And then he finds out that Carol Ferris has gone to Coast City where the women are being murdered, so Hal decides to go there to make sure that she's okay. Meanwhile, she's having an interview, like, she's talking to one of her friends who is helping her investigate this stuff, and then her friend gets attacked by the alien and killed. So Carol runs away and is just like, this is horrible. And then I'm pretty sure she doesn't really, like, appear at all for the rest of the story. Like, she sees the alien, she sees her friend die, and then leaves. And then that's it, she's out of the story. Nick goes back to his house to see his mum and his uncle, and he finds the remains of his mum having been killed by something. You would assume it's the aliens, but Gerard sets up something else in this that has nothing to do with Bloodlines, but he's, like, invented it. So basically, the alien in this one is, like, can turn into, like, a human woman form, and she has sex with guys, and then when she sucks out their spinal fluid, instead of dying, they become her, like, monstrous minions. I know, it's weird. None of the other aliens could do that. This one can. And so, like, Nightblade, as he's known as now, and Green Lantern eventually find each other and they team up. Because Nightblade goes to his neighbor's house and finds out that his neighbor is one of these monsters that's under her control. So Green Lantern and Nightblade have to fend themselves against them. This is where Nightblade finds out that he can grow limbs back because his arm gets cut off and then he just grows it back. It's really gross. And, Hal Jordan and Nightblade fight against this alien. Hal Jordan almost ends up being forced to have sex with her because she can, like, mind control him. But he manages to break through, and they beat her, and then just like the other aliens, she gets away, and Nick decides that he's going to continue on being a hero, and Hal decides to fly off and continue being Green Lantern. And that's what happens in the entire annual. There's a lot of them, like, going around the neighborhood, like, finding these controlled men and trying to, like, investigate what's going on, but, like, long story cut short, they find her, they fight her, she gets away. Nightblade is a character now until Infinite Crisis where he's going to get killed off. So, whatever. Let's move on to another annual because that one wasn't very good. So we're going to go and move on to the Batman annual. Batman annual number 17. It's a lot of annuals. So, Batman Annual 17. This introduces a character known as Kelvin Mao, aka Ballistic. He works for the Gotham City Police Department as a member of a squad with this other guy called, like, McCain and stuff. This annual, it's funny because, like, in between the Shadow of the Bat annual and this annual, during this event, Bruce Wayne's back was broken by Bane, and so he's not Batman anymore, because he was Batman in the last annual, and now he's not Batman anymore, he's got his back broken. So the current Batman is John Paul Valley. And John Paul Valley was Azrael, and now he's Batman, and he's trying to fill in Bruce's boots, but he's a bit more violent. He eventually starts, like, wearing crazy armor and shit because he thinks that he needs, like, more weapons to fight well as Batman, which eventually causes him to go too far, and then Bruce will come back and fight him, etc., etc. That's not what we're here for. We're not here to talk about Nightfall. We're here to talk about Batman teaming up with Ballistic. So, Angon, the same alien from the last Batman annual, is featured in this one. It basically continues the storyline of Angon is going around killing people. GCPD are investigating, as well as Jean-Paul Valley now, because taken over as Batman. Kelvin, Mal, and his squad go to a warehouse where they get attacked by the alien. All of his squad gets killed, and he gets his spine sucked out. And then he gets taken to the hospital, and that's when they realize that like he's gotten powers because his is gross. He gets like an exoskeleton, so he's got like red hard skin around his body, and he gets like little like bug spikes coming out of his chin. So he gets like unbreakable skin. And he can also see at night because these green sliders grow over his eyes. It's really gross. So, yeah, after finding out that he has powers, and, you know, deciding that he can probably help take down these aliens, he meets John Paul Valley's Batman. He and Batman decide to team up against Angon. They track down Angon to a building. They actually rig the building with a bomb because they plan on blowing Angon up in the building to kill Angon. And so they successfully do that. They blow up the building. Batman and Ballistic manage to get out in time. The reason he's called Ballistic is because he uses guns, even though like his power isn't guns. He uses them. And I guess because he's got like ballistic armor, whatever. So yeah, Batman and Ballistic succeed in supposedly killing Angon, but because these annuals aren't allowed to actually have any, like, final endings where, like, the alien dies most of the time, Angon survives the explosion and washes up on a beach where this old guy finds her and he gets munched off screen, and it's kind of left on a cliffhanger of, like, Angon's not dead, she's coming back, and I'm getting this feeling that Angon is, like, the main alien. Because, like, so far, not only has she been featured in multiple annuals, she was in the Lobo one, she was in the Batman one, she was, like, the Batman ones, she was in another one, I'm pretty sure, alongside another one. I think it was, like, the Superman one. She was in that one. The Man of Steel one. Yeah, she was in that, right? I think that was her. I'm pretty sure that was the same one. She's been featured in multiple, so she's the closest we have to like an overarching antagonist. But yeah, I would say that this one is just kind of like confusing in the terms of like this was happening at the same time as Nightfall. So like you're reading one Batman annual and it's Bruce Wayne, and then you read the next one and it's like, oh, Bruce Wayne's back's been broken by Bane and now it's a different dude. And it's like, imagine reading this event while you're not reading Batman and just being like, wait, what? Bruce is gone? You got his bat broken? What the hell? Like, especially in the 90s when, like, Nightfall was not a well-known event. Imagine reading this and seeing that and just being like, what the hell? Bruce Wayne's back is broken and it happened in a different book? What? Come on. Now we've got this John Paul, now we've got this blonde dude with round glasses. This Batman wannabe. I think what really drags down this annual though is that the fact that these annuals aren't allowed to have any like climaxes that really pay off because they're not allowed to kill the aliens. The aliens have to live by the end, so they either run away or they seemingly die and then show up alive at the very end to be like, hey, we're still alive. And I think that really drags down these annuals. I think if the writers have more freedom to actually, like, kill these aliens off, then they would probably have better endings than they do. But yeah, that's that one. What are my feelings on Ballistic? I don't give a shit. I don't care about Ballistic at all. I don't care about any of these new characters. There's no reason to care about them. You know? You can't just introduce a character out of... Like, the closest I ever cared about one of these new characters was in the Superman one with Green, her name like Sarah Green, whatever her name was, because at least she was an established character that I had read in previous Superman comics, so there was a little bit more there, some more meat in that story, you know. But these ones, it's just like, this guy was created for this annual and this annual alone, and he's not going to really do anything afterwards, so why would I even care about him? Alright, so the Justice League International Annual number 4 in Bloodlines introduces a character known as Lionheart. It's called Justice League International, but we're following the Justice League Europe, specifically, that team. I don't know if International is disbanded by this point or not. The funny thing about this issue, it's written by Gerard Jones, Lionheart doesn't actually like gain any powers. Like, he gets his spine sucked out, but it's at the very end of the story, and throughout the story he is already being a hero. He has like an energy sword and some armor and like an energy shield. So like, it's kind of like he only got his spine fluid sucked out because editorial mandates that has to happen, but it doesn't give him any powers. Like, he's already a hero before that even happens. But Lionheart is basically this guy called Richard Plant, who is a British dude who works in the Thames, and he gets abducted by like the British Secret Service, and they train him to become a warrior that can help protect their security, and he begins helping the British investigate a bunch of murders going around in London, which are the Bloodlines aliens, the Bloodlines parasites, as I've learnt that that's what they're called in universe. And as he's investigating these murders, he meets the Justice League International, specifically Elongated Man, Metamorpho, and a character known as the Tasmanian Devil, who you would have seen if you'd listened to my Millennium episodes. He is featured in a couple of those tie-ins. Or was it Invasion? I think it was Invasion, actually. It was either Invasion or Millennium. I think it was Millennium, and maybe he was also in Invasion. I think he was in both. But yeah, he's just a Australian character. He's basically like Wolverine, pretty much. Same kind of character. But yeah, they, like, Lionheart thinks that they're the ones murdering people, but they eventually convince him that they are heroes, just like him, and so they team up against the alien parasites and defeat them. I think in these ones it's like Gamia, Gloth, and Glonth, and like, can't remember the name of the other one. And they win. They beat the aliens, and then the aliens get away. And that's basically the entire thing. But the thing about Lionheart that's important to mention is that Lionheart as a character, Richard Plant, sucks because he's just a massive racist. He's one of those caricatures of like a British person who just hates everyone that isn't British. And like, he's just, he literally says that like, when he's talking to Tasmanian Devil, he's like, we should have kept Australia as like a prison cell, like, territory. Like, literally just calling all Australians, like, or people that are from Australia, like, criminals that should be under Britain's boot. And it's just like, wow, okay, dude. I don't like you. You suck. Why would I ever root for you when you're, when you're a shitty person? But yeah, that's that one. That's that annual. That's what happens in that. So the next annual that we're going to be talking about, because there's no reason to keep talking about this one when we can just move on to Robin Annual 2. Now, the last Robin Annual was pretty good. The Eclipso one. So I'm curious if this one is going to be just as good. Also, I forgot to mention, I did some research while in between recording, while I was reading these issues, because as you know, I read them and then I record them. I found out that the reason why all of these characters that they are creating are so shitty is because apparently one of DC's mandates was like, they got to create a new character. But what I didn't know was that, like, even though they're creating these characters, part of the requirements was that, like, they wouldn't own them. So even though they're creating these characters, they don't get to own them. Which is why they are creating these... So they created these shitty characters on purpose, like the writers and stuff, as like a middle finger to DC of like, if you're going to make me create characters for you, but I don't even get to own them, well, then you can just have this shitty character with no depth to them. And that's why most of the writers did that, which I find really funny, and I find that interesting. And I'm glad that the writers stood up to the editors and were like, fuck you. You want me to create a new character, but you won't give me the rights? Alright, then I'll create, Blobby the Blob. And that's your character. He's just a big blobby... He's just a dude that turns into a blob, and he has no backstory. There you go. Alright, so the next annual is obviously Robin Annual 2, like I said before. Something interesting about this one is, like, the main focus characters of this are the Cyber Rats, specifically a character known as Razor Sharp, who is the one featured on the cover, and another character called Chanel, and another character called Hack Rat. And what's funny about them is that, like, they already have their hero names before they even get powers. Only 2 of them get powers. Razor Sharp and Chanel both get powers. But yeah, like, their names are related to their powers, so I guess they got really lucky that they happened to get powers related to their names. This was good. This was an enjoyable annual. I enjoyed reading it. So, basically what happens in this one is, the Cyber Rats, as they call themselves, are trying to hack into Wayne Enterprises' satellites for this man. They've been hired by this guy named the Collector, and he's like this brutal dude who, like, if they don't do what he wants, like, he'll kill them, that kind of shit, And so Tim Drake, who is Robin, is surveying Gotham, and he sees them climbing up the tower, and he's like, alright, gotta deal with them, because they look really suspicious. So he stops them from hacking into the satellite, and the Cyber Rats manage to get away from Tim, and so Tim goes investigating to figure out where they are. Meanwhile, one of the alien parasites is in Gotham killing people, as so-and-so in the other annuals. The Cyber Rats go and meet the Collector to tell them that, like, why they failed doing the satellite, because Tim got in their way, and the Collector's just like, I don't care. Chances are you've probably leaked information somehow. Like, people are going to trace it back to me, so I'm just going to kill you all right now. And one of the members of the Cyber Rats, whose name is Mega, gets shot and killed. And so the other Cyber Rats run away and hide in, like, a construction site. And the Collector's men go after them, and that's when one of the alien parasites comes, kills all the Collector's men, and sucks the spinal fluid out of Razor Sharp and Chanel. Chanel ends up in a coma. Razor Sharp dies for a little bit. Hack Rat takes them back to their little base, where Razor Sharp discovers that she now has the ability to turn her arms into razor blades, and Chanel finds out that he has the ability to put his conscience into, like, TVs and stuff and control technology. Get it? His name is Chanel, which is channel. You get it? See, like, from the very beginning, Chuck Dixon was like, I'm just gonna, like, come up with their superhero names right now and have them be little puns and stuff. So yeah, they get powers, and they decide that they want to get revenge, or at least Razor Sharp decides that she wants to get revenge on the Collector for killing Mega, and the other two just kind of go along with her because she's so headstrong. So they infiltrate the Collector's facility. Tim Drake tracks them there. He figures out who they are and goes after them. They infiltrate the Collector's facility. They cross paths with Tim, and Tim tries to stop Razor Sharp from killing the Collector. But she manages to get away from him, and then she goes after the Collector by cutting the power and causing an outage. And then she fights the Collector, and before she can kill him, Tim shows up and stops her from killing him. And he, like, kicks Razor Sharp through a window, and they begin falling, and Razor Sharp saves both of their lives. And it's at this point that she realizes that Tim was right and that it's not worth killing the Collector. And then she's just like, hey, maybe you and I should, like, team up. Maybe you'd be a great member of the Cyber Rats. Like, maybe we should team up. And then they go their separate ways. And it's kind of like, if you want to read more about the Cyber Rats, they do have a miniseries. I think it's like a 3 or 4 issue miniseries. And it features Tim Drake in it. So if you're interested about reading up on the Cyber Rats, I don't think it's written by Chuck Dixon. I think it's written by somebody else. But yeah, check that out. I'm going to, because I'm only reading this for the event. I'm not trying to get invested in Razor Sharp or anything. But I think that this is up there as like one of the better annuals. I think Chuck Dixon is just a good writer. Like he's good at writing fun stuff, you know, and because this is Robin and this is Tim Drake, who was a young guy at this time. You know, he's trying to make the Robin series as fun as possible, even during an event that is pretty bleak and very like grim and dark and gross. Like he still manages to find a way to make it bright and vibrant in a Robin comic. And so yeah, I enjoyed this one. Yeah. And so now that annual is dealt with, the next annual that we're going to be talking about is Action Comics Annual 5, which is another Superman one, but this time it features the Eradicator. Now, in past events, I complained about how many Superman annuals there are, because, like, those ones were just, like, it was always just Clark Kent multiple times, like, multiple Clark Kent storylines in the same event, and it was a bit much. At least in this one, we've got a different Superman each one, so at least it feels like we got some variety. So we're going to see what the Eradicator gets up to when he fights Loose Cannon, who is a Hulk ripoff. So looking forward to that. So, the Action Comics Annual, starring Eradicator, guest starring first appearance of Loose Cannon, the hero introduced in this one. Loose Cannon, his character named Eddie, who is a member of the SCU, a co-worker of Maggie Sawyer. Eddie is essentially just a character created for this. He is literally a rip-off of the Hulk, on purpose. Like, Jeff Loebs was like, you're not gonna allow me to have ownership of this character, I'm just gonna do the Hulk. And, like, it's right down to the T of, like, he doesn't turn into Loose Cannon by being angry. No, Jeff Loebs decided to base Loose Cannon on the early Hulk, where, like, back in the early days of Hulk, Bruce Banner would turn into the Hulk when it was nighttime. But it's the opposite for Loose Cannon, where, like, Eddie turns into Loose Cannon in daytime, and then at night he turns back to normal. Eddie is also a paraplegic. He doesn't have the use of his legs. And so whenever he's not Loose Cannon, he can't walk. But when he is Loose Cannon, he can. I think that's an interesting take. I find that interesting. A character who is disabled, but when they transform, you know, like, they become, like, they can walk again for a while. Like, that's the kind of thing that I thought that they should have done with Barbara. It's like, if they wanted her to be Batgirl again, have it where, like, the chip that she has in her spine works for a few hours, where she could be Batgirl, and then after that, she's in a wheelchair. You know, so that you don't have to get rid of her disability. So I appreciate that they did that. Like, they didn't just make the character be like, oh, he can walk again forever. It's like, no, he can only walk again when he's Loose Cannon. After that, he's still disabled. So basically what happens to Eddie is he keeps getting described as being a Loose Cannon. That's how he gets his name, Loose Cannon. He basically gets hired by Maggie to investigate homicides that are going on. Homeless people are being killed. As you know, it's by the alien parasites. The one that features in this one is Lizik, who is the woman that has sex with men and then they become under her thrall, and she eats women and then also eats the men too sometimes. So he finds her in an alleyway, she coaxes him in, and then another alien parasite comes up behind him and sucks his spinal fluid out, and that's how he becomes Loose Cannon. Meanwhile, the Eradicator is working to try and keep the city safe. The Eradicator Superman is a Kryptonian computer who believes that he is Superman. Like, basically, the thing that Eradicator believes is that, like, he is Superman's soul uploaded into the Kryptonian computer and then printed out in a physical form, which is his form. So he truly believes that he is Superman in a new body. So he goes investigating, trying to find Lizik. He does find Lizik. Lizik almost tricks him, tries to eat him, but obviously he's Eradicator, Superman, so she can't do anything to him. He throws her off a building. Loose Cannon finds her, having just woken up from his spinal tap, um, where he wants to take her away to get answers. Surprisingly, Loose Cannon, not only can he talk, he's also a pretty rational dude. He's a very nice guy, unlike the Hulk. Like, he's the complete opposite of the Hulk. In fact, he's the more rational one than Eradicator, because Eradicator, like, kills people. And Loose Cannon has to tell Eradicator not to kill people. He's like, don't kill these people. And also, like, after their battle with the alien parasites, Eradicator decides to, like, the parasites leave, and Eradicator tries to go after them, and Loose Cannon is the one that's like, hey, bro, you gotta stay behind and help these cops and stuff, because otherwise people are gonna die. And he manages to convince Eradicator to stay behind and help. So even though Jeff Loeb didn't try at all when creating this character on purpose, he just created a Hulk ripoff, somehow he still created a character that was enjoyable to read about. You know, like, I'm not going to pick up the Loose Cannon series that was written after this, but I'm also not going to say that Loose Cannon was a terrible character. Like, I think he is one of those characters that was, like, given more credit than was due, especially since this is probably a character that Jeff Loeb came up in within 5 seconds. And he already has more depth than some other characters that we've seen throughout the years. So yeah, they help each other, they beat the alien parasites, the alien parasites get away, Loose Cannon and Eradicator decide to be friends, and then Loose Cannon heads back home, and the sun goes down, and that's when he discovers that's when he turns back into Eddie, and that's the whole annual. I enjoyed this one, and it was also a bit of a faster read because there's a lot of splash pages in this, which I appreciate that in an annual. Like, in a regular comic that's only like 20 pages, if you have too many splash pages, it feels like you're not getting your money's worth. But like, if you're reading an annual, I'm fine with there being a few splash pages, because otherwise the annuals, especially if it's just one story, they feel like they can drag. Like, it's different if it's like multiple stories, but with these ones it's just the one story. So I was glad that this was a fast read, because and that Jeff Loeb didn't stall around and explain everything and stuff. It was like, no, you're here to read a story about Eradicator Superman teaming up with Loose Cannon, fighting aliens. Let's just do it. So yeah, now that annual is done for, is over, the next one we're going to be doing is the Legion of Superheroes Annual 4, because apparently the Legion of Superheroes have their own series at this point in time, which I didn't even know about. So, yeah, I was not expecting this. I knew Legion was going on at the time, but yeah, I didn't know Legion of Superheroes had a series. They must have just gotten one. Alright, so the Legion of Superheroes Annual is going to be a pretty brief explanation because it almost has nothing to do with the event. It introduces a brand new character named Jam, who is probably the worst character introduced so far. He's literally just a guy on a skateboard who has the ability to teleport around. And he's just like hey, what's up, dude? This is killer. He's just that dude. Like, he's just like 90s representation of a dude on a skateboard, like a surfer dude on a skateboard. Kind of thing, like a skater dude. And he meets Angon, the alien parasite, while Timberwolf, who is a Legion, is investigating the murders. Yeah, Jam meets Angon in her civilian attire, and then as he leaves, he ends up falling into a bin. He falls off his skateboard and lands in a bin, and then like a homeless man comes up to him and they have a bit of a chat, and then the homeless man gets killed by Angon, and then Angon sucks out Jam's spinal fluid, and he gets powers, and then Timberwolf fights Angon, and they both get messed up. And then they get taken back to Legion headquarters where they heal. And that's the last time you see Angon in this whole annual. Like, she leaves, and then the rest of the annual has nothing to do with Bloodlines. It's just all about Jam hanging out with the Legion of Superheroes and just teleporting around, doing shit, helping them with their shit. Like, I was reading it and I was just like, I do not care. I was reading it and I was like, I'm just not going to bother explaining this annual because it has almost nothing to do with Bloodlines, you know, and I'm kind of done going through tie-ins and just being like, nothing happens in this. And that's the thing, like, nothing happens. It's just Jam hanging out with the Legion of Superheroes the whole time. It's just like, and then he did this, and then they went here, and then they went there, and then they did this, and, like, that's not why I'm reading this. I'm reading this in order to at least see the Legion of Superheroes face the alien parasites. But no, they just completely ignored that and just had the Legion of Superheroes just bullshit around. I was actually kind of, like, sad, because I like the Legion of Superheroes, and I was like, man, you could do an interesting story of the alien parasites. But yeah. Anyway, that's the Legion of Superheroes 1. And so the next annual we're going to be doing is Green Arrow. Alright, so the Green Arrow annual, this one also features Lysick, but in this one she just straight up calls herself Lilith. And it also introduces a new character called Hook. I feel like Mike Grell, who was the writer of this, definitely cared a lot more about Hook. Maybe he's like one of those writers where it's just like, I can't just create a character who doesn't have a backstory or anything. Like, I have this need to, like, give this character at least some substance. So he creates a whole backstory. Like, he puts a lot of work into Hook. He makes him a character that you're supposed to feel sorry for. Basically, Hook is this guy named Sergeant Masterson, who is a veteran. He has only one hand. He has a hook, hence the name. And he's completely blind, too. So he's really been through the ringer. And eventually, like, we would find out that his past is that, like, he was forced to, like, sleep with this woman for money. Or at least they tried to. But he refused to do it. And she was like, man, if you don't, like, I'll get in a lot of trouble if I don't get the money for my boss. And he's like, no, it's like, it's all good. But then he ends up sleeping with her anyway because he ends up falling in love with her, and they find out that he slept with her without paying her, and then he gets in a lot of trouble, and then that eventually leads to him. He goes out on like a round trip in one of the army trucks, and somebody chucks a grenade in the truck, like in the fuel, and the truck explodes while he's in it, and that's how he loses his hand and he goes blind. So now that we got his backstory out of the way, he meets Oliver Queen at this place called the Rogues Gallery, which is such a great name for a gallery in a comic book. Obviously, it's a reference to the name that, like, is given to the supervillains of a character. So Oliver Queen meets Masterson outside this Rogues Gallery after taking out some criminals, and because the guy is blind and because he's a veteran, Oliver takes some money from the criminals and gives it to him, and he's like, here you go, for your services. You know, we're both old men that have been through the ringer, and you deserve this. I just like to give back to those that deserve it. And I think that's just a really great moment for Oliver. It just kind of shows the kind of guy he is. And then Oliver goes off to this fundraiser dinner as Green Arrow to show off some tricks and stuff. And while he's there, he meets Lilith. And because he's Oliver Queen, he has a thing for her. And she just kind of ropes him in. Because even though she's an alien, she has a thing for Oliver in this. And later on, she does try to kill him, but, like, at the party, it seems like she has no interest in killing him. So Masterson gets ganged up on by a gang who try to beat him up. And he's kind of really cool because, like, even though he's blind, he can sense them. And so he starts, like, fighting them. He breaks one of the guy's nose. So they run away and get killed by Lilith. And then Masterson gets attacked by Lilith because she appears to him as a woman, and then kind of coaxes him in and then sucks out his spinal fluid. And then Masterson gains the ability to transform into this character called Hook, who has a giant golden hook that can cut through anything, and he can also create an aura around himself that allows him to see even though he's blind. So it's kind of like Daredevil. It's like if you got Daredevil and the Marvel character Grim Reaper and fused them together. and then you get Masterson. And so, as this new character, he tries to go after Lilith to get revenge and stop her from murdering people because Oliver finds out that there are murders going on and he thinks it might be Masterson because he's a veteran and he was kind of a little bit weird and he was like, maybe it's him. So he goes investigating the murders and he comes across Masterson and they team up against Lilith and they fight Lilith. And then this one kind of ends with, like, Lilith gets struck by gets struck by electricity set off by Masterson because he cuts a bunch of electrical cables and electrocutes her. And then she just disappears. She gets electrocuted and then Oliver's just like, oh, that's that dealt with. Alright, I'll see ya. And then Masterson turns back to normal and Oliver Queen is like, wait a minute, weren't you just... Oh, whatever. Okay, cool. I could have sworn you were just a superhero, but it seems like you're just a blind dude again, so whatever. And they kind of go their separate ways, and then that's where the annual ends. And it ends with Masterson, like, revealing that, like, he can still see with his surroundings, because an apple falls from the tree and he catches it with his hook, even though he's still blind. And Oliver Queen is just like, ah, man, that sucks that, like, I didn't get to sleep with Lilith because she was really hot. Like, it literally ends with him looking at a picture of her and he's like, man, it's always the beautiful ones that end up turning out to be the most deadly. And, yeah, that's basically the entire annual. This one was fine. I didn't think it was, like, the best thing ever. But I definitely think it's, like, if I was ranking these, it would be higher up on the list of, like, annuals that I didn't hate. And I was able to read them and just be like, for an annual, fine. That was good. Like, I enjoyed it enough. I guess I just like Oliver Queen. Like, I like Green Arrow, so, like, I'm probably going to enjoy it. You know? And so, next we're going to move on to the final annual that we're going to be covering today. Detective Comics Annual 6. Which is another Azrael annual because Nightfall is still going on. So let's get straight to that. It's written by Chuck Dixon. And the Robin one he wrote was pretty good, so hopefully this one's good too. So this annual, essentially, like, it's just Azrael, like, it's just continuing the other Batman annual, where, like, Azrael is searching for more alien parasites, trying to save Gotham City. This time he's dealing with the alien Praetor. That's the one he's dealing with. He fights a gang at the very beginning, and then one of the gang members runs away and gets attacked by Praetor. Gets his spine juices sucked out, and he gets the ability to, like, stretch his body around like elasticity. Kind of like Clayface. But I thought he was a new Clayface, but he's not a new Clayface. But I feel like he might have inspired the Clayface that was in the Batman cartoon. Like, the cartoon is The Batman. Because he looks a lot like Ethan from that show. So I feel like somebody might have read this annual and been like, wait a minute. He kind of looks like Clayface with his powers. Maybe we should make him an actual character. He isn't the Bloodlines character. The actual Bloodlines character in this is a character named Geist, who is this guy that works at a place called Chemex. And he gets attacked by Praetor and he gets his spine juices sucked out and he becomes this superhero called Geist, who can be invisible, but only in like light. If he's in darkness, you can see him, but if he's in the light, then you can't see him. Which is ironic because he calls himself Geist the Twilight Man, so it's like his powers are the opposite of what his name is. So he teams up with Batman in order to fight Praetor, and Montoya and Bullock, who are detectives, are investigating murders as well, the alien parasites, so it ends up being like Batman, Geist, Montoya and Bullock all team up to fight Praetor, and as we always know, Praetor manages to get away, and there really isn't much more to really say about this one. That's pretty much all that happens, is that it's just Azrael investigating the murders alongside like Montoya and Bullock, and Geist, you know, getting his powers, getting a costume, coming up with a name, and fighting Praetor, and like that's really it. That's as straightforward as it is. If I was to make a list of like annuals to read, I wouldn't include this one just because I think it's just pretty mediocre. Like, it's not it's not like bad, but it's also not like good. It's just kind of like, no, maybe if you're reading Nightfall, read this with it because it's a part of Azrael's career as Batman. But like, if you're not reading Batman, the Azrael ones are pretty skippable because it's not Bruce Wayne, so like Azrael isn't going to be Batman anymore after this event, you know. So it's not like it's gonna like, it's not like you're missing out on anything. But then again, that might be a reason to actually read these, where I'd be like, maybe read these Batman annuals because it's the only time you're going to see Azrael take part in an event. I think this is the first event where both Superman and Batman weren't in it at all. And it was different people. I mean, Bruce Wayne was in the first one, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, that's going to be it for this week's episode of Midlife Crisis and Bloodlines Part 1. Obviously I could keep going if I wanted to, but I don't want to because Bloodlines is a hard event to get through, and I need a little bit of a break. So we're going to pick this back up again next week with Bloodlines Part 2, where I will be finishing the Bloodlines event, and then we'll be able to move on. And I think after this, every event that we do from now on is better. Even the bad ones are considered to still be better than Bloodlines. Like right now, we are doing what is considered to be the worst of the worst. So once I've gotten through this, it should be much better. So I don't think we're ever going to come across an event as bad as this. There are some events that are considered bad, but I don't think they're going to be as bad as this. We might be able to find the silver lining. I'm having a hard time finding the silver lining of Bloodlines. I'm trying to come up with good things to say, and it really just comes down to like, this annual isn't as bad as the others. This one's pretty, like, there was a couple of good ones, but so far it's definitely been like a lot more mediocrity or straight up bad than anything worth reading. So if you are going to read Bloodlines, I would mostly just say read the Lobo one and then skip straight to the 2-part, like the 2-issue final. But who knows, maybe next week there's going to be a whole ton of good annuals. I guess you're going to have to find out when I cover them. And if you enjoy the podcast, then please rate the podcast and follow it if you're not following it already. Share it around. If there's anyone you know that would be interested in listening, then feel free to share it with them. And yeah, next week, Bloodlines Part 2. And then after that, we'll be doing some more Flash. So I hope you enjoyed this, and even though I'm not a huge fan of this event, I do still enjoy talking about it. There's not like any kind of just like I gotta talk about more Bloodlines today. Like, I still enjoy it. Because I find these bad events quite fascinating. You know, I still have an interest in reading this stuff and just being like, why is it so bad? Is there a reason behind it? Is it as bad as people say it is? But yeah, I'll hope to see you next week and have a good day or a good afternoon or night, wherever you happen to be listening to this. Bye.